This is the Art of Network Engineering podcast. In this podcast, we'll explore tools, technologies, and talented people. We aim to bring you information to expand your skill sets and toolbox and share the stories of fellow network engineers.
Welcome to the Art of Network Engineering podcast. I am one of your illustrious hosts. My name is Aaron Weiler. With me, I have Dan Richards. Hello, Dan.
Howdy. How's it going?
It's going well. Thank you so much for asking. And fresh from the eye doctor, Andy Laptev. How are you, sir?
Hi. Great. You guys all look
You
wonderful.
you look scared. Last and certainly not least, AJ Murray. How are you, sir?
Pretty good, how are you, man?
I'm well, thank you. Let's start this episode off on an extremely light note. AJ, we got some wins from the Discord channel to lay on us. What do we got, man?
You got some big W's this week.
Sweet.
Luke Skymaster and Mikey, their Discord Johns, both scored the CCNA this week.
Yeah.
Whoa!
There you go.
Yeah,
Big one.
Hey, those aren't
Two
easy.
CCNAs in 1 week.
Two CCNAs in 1 week. Also, IT guy Blake got a new job.
Nice.
Awesome.
I believe I read it correctly. He's it's his first IT job, and he's going to be working for MSP, ISP, working in the data center.
Oh,
doing
that's
some,
fun.
nice.
Lots of exposure
on-site
to
stuff.
cool
Yep.
stuff. Yeah,
Yep.
man. Oh, good for him.
That's a good first job in the IT world.
Right. Yeah. You get exposed to just about everything. Virtualization. I mean, wow. Sky's the limit. That's cool, man.
Yep.
Well, that's good to hear. So,
And a win for us.
oh,
We
Go
hit
on.
40,000 downloads today.
go us. I'll
There we go.
golf. I'll golf clap us. You know,
Yeah.
you know what? I will up there. Come on. Yeah. Actually, you know what? That's not us. That's, if you're hearing this, it's you. So
That's right.
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's right.
We all
Thank you very
appreciate it.
much.
Yes.
Yes, Thank you.
Thank you, listeners.
So, this past year has been a little rough, right? And everybody handles everything different. And yes, I'm talking about COVID-19. It's affected a lot of people, some more than others. But I think one of the most glaring things that popped out to me was the effect that it has on people mentally. Because I personally struggle with stuff like anxiety and depression. I've had ADHD since God knows when, I'm like an OG diagnosed guy like Andy, like mid 80s type thing,
But wait, you didn't get diagnosed back in the day, see?
No, you
Yeah.
didn't.
You were just the
didn't-
annoying kid in class that couldn't sit
right,
still like me.
couldn't
Yeah.
shut up. Right. It's very difficult though. It's interesting because I've actually been kind of diving into, we talk about like make it stick and all these things, like the science behind like why we remember stuff and all this other stuff. To me, it's equally as interesting, like even from an evolutionary standpoint, why I even do the things I do. Right. And ADHD is one of them. I think it's an overused term personally, but it is a real thing, right? You can brain scan, and oftentimes like people with extreme ADHD will have different brain waves and stuff. So it's very like seeable, right? It's a proven fact. So it's just an overused thing. So I've never really liked saying it like, hey, yeah, I have ADHD, because it oftentimes sounds like an excuse. So that being said, I mean, everybody kind of has their own things to go. I think that what COVID has done to a lot of folks is maybe exacerbated some of those things if they were lying previously. I'm one of those people actually, and sometimes when things get like too much and they get to a point where you can't take it anymore, sometimes you just break, right? And I've been there, and it's rough, right? I know other folks that have been there. I'm not going to speak for anybody on here. That's I'll let anybody here speak to their own journey, but I just want to make sure that everybody out there knows that if you are doing, and if you're feeling any of those emotions, number one, it's normal. But number two, it's very, very helpable. You can't help it. You could fix it. You don't have to feel that way all the time. And it's probably easier than you think to fix it. I can't speak to every case, but 99% of the work is realizing that you can fix it. Not fixing it, just realizing that you can fix it. That's one of the most important things. And I'm just going to tell you straight up, I have a therapist, right? I see her every other week. She has explicit instructions to quote unquote bust my balls because you guys know me. You hear me all the time. I talk a lot. I tend to like wander sometimes when I'm explaining things, and that's not what I need. You know what I mean? Like sometimes I need someone to be like, hey, dude, when you're doing that, that's not okay. That's how how do you think that affects someone else, right? So not only my own internal self, but being more conscious of how I'm talking to other folks and how they could take maybe what I'm saying or how I'm reacting to what they're saying, and you know, how that can all be like, I don't know, affected just in a big, messy, sticky, emotional mess, right? So if you're having any struggles out there, we just wanted to make sure that, you know, we would talk about, you know, how it's affected us, so that maybe it might be easier for you to maybe talk about it, right? So, and maybe it's not necessarily you that's being affected. Maybe it's a loved one too that you could help, and in that regard too. So I don't want to speak all by myself. I'll let anybody else, I'll open the floor for everybody else so we can kind of get the conversation going. But just right off the top of the bat, it's COVID, right? Like, we're all locked in. I mean, who here is not feeling just like completely cooped up at this point?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, when you think about it, like, this is a form of torture. I mean, you send people to prison, right? Like, that is a punishment. And that's kind of what this feels like. And we're just such social beings, and like, okay, social media, Twitter, meetings, Zoom meetings, it's not the same. We know that. It's not the same.
Right.
So how are we dealing with that?
I'll hop it. Oh, go ahead, AJ.
No. Well, all I was going to say was, you know, prior to COVID-19, I had to travel a lot for work, like weekly, in my vehicle, on the road, occasionally on a plane. I think at one point last year, or in 2019, so pre-COVID-19, I was on a plane every week for almost 2 months straight, and I was gone like 2 or 3 days a week. Come COVID-19, I don't get on a plane for like a year. I had to fly last week for the first time, like in literally a year. And, you know, it was something that I used to be completely cool with, would do it very frequently. I had like status on a couple of airlines. That's how often I flew. I used to make regular trips over to the UK. So long time on an airplane with a bunch of people surrounded around me. Last week, I flew down to Dulles to get a connecting flight, and I'm sitting in the terminal, and there is this gigantic mob of people coming through the airport, and I about like lost it, like in my head. I'm like, because I have not seen that many people in one place at one time for a very long time.
Well, we've been trained this past year to stay away from crowds of people, right?
Yeah.
And here you are being approached by a crowd of people at work, like.
Yeah, and like there's this huge mob of people coming, and I'm like, I just want to like get away from this, but then like I turn around and there's like a completely full terminal of people like all sitting down around, and it's just like I can't escape this.
Yeah.
So did you start?
Did you have your Lysol and your?
Right.
So I mean, this is going to sound silly, but like, so how did it feel? Were you getting like hit with some fear, some anxiety? Like, did you feel like you had to get out of there? What?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, a lot of anxiety, because you know, again, like this kind of goes against the stuff that we're kind of taught to do if we want to like avoid exposure or spreading it or anything like that. And so like up here in Vermont, like for the most part, everybody kind of follows the rules. We all mask up, we social distance. Like, you know, I visit with friends visit here, but there's seriously only like 2 people that we really trust enough to let into our circle, right? Like, or two groups of friends, 2 different couples, like, and that's it. Like, if anybody else calls us and like, hey, you want to hang out? We're like, no.
So what did you do in that situation? Like, you couldn't leave, I guess. You had to wait for your plane.
Yeah,
so, like, did you take a deep breath? Did you try to get recentered? Like, did it pass?
Yeah. How do you cope when you freak out like that?
Yeah, it was just kind of like, you know, I can't get out of this. This is going to change. I just kind of had to sit there and think to myself, like, well, I'm masked up.
Right.
I wash my hands. I do everything I should do. And I just kind of like let the group
did you get to the point where like you were having like a physical response? Like, was your heart racing? Were your hands sweating?
Yeah.
Oh, that's terrifying, man.
And then it didn't help because my next flight, I had to go to Cleveland, Ohio, for a job I did last week. And my next flight coach was completely full. Like that whole thing about, blocked out seating rows, like not a thing on the airline I was on. And the entire coach section was like shoulder to shoulder.
It's terrifying, dude.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm trying to avoid that as much as possible. My wife actually has the vaccine because she's in healthcare.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, same here.
But
My wife does too.
with all these new strains and stuff, like I don't know. Like you still have to play that card. But dude, I mean that's awful. I've totally been there with the anxiety. It's something that we don't think about because right now we're thinking about like what it's like to be cooped up and how we're coping with that. But what happens, like what you just described, when all of a sudden we all just break out into the wild together? Like we're not going to know how to act, right? Like that's going to be just as difficult. Like, and I haven't even given a single thought to that, and that's giving me anxiety. So,
Sorry.
Thank you for that. Today was my therapist day already, so now I gotta wait. So, but yeah, I guess maybe going forward, it would be my question. So. We know that's going to happen to you going forward. Have you thought about how you can like maybe mitigate that, or some sort of like trick you could use to almost like calm yourself down? I hate saying calm yourself down because it's not what it is. It's like just center yourself, right? Like have you thought about that?
No, honestly, not really. It's just like when I get into a situation like that, just try to breathe, and then just try to remember like I do other things to take care of myself in this situation, and hopefully that's enough.
Yep. Yeah. What about you, Andy?
I guess we could start with COVID. Like, so you had framed it in the beginning how you've struggled with some anxiety and depression over the years.
Yeah.
And I have too, off and on through different things. But just to start present time and work backward if we want. COVID really took a toll, on my mental health and my well-being. And, I don't want to frame this episode as like, hey, if you have pre-existing conditions, COVID really kicked them in, because you could probably never have had, you could just be walking around dumb and happy. And this past year, I think would give anybody
Totally.
Some challenges. I mean, I'll just tell you today, as an example, we've been home, 320 something days.
Yep.
Here. It started.
Who's counting?
Yeah, it started.
Who's counting?
Right. It started March of last year. The daycare's closed down. The kids have been home. We don't see anybody, blah, 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 blah. And we're doing everything that the CDC and WHO said. And, I know there's different feelings and all that, but I'm a science guy. I listen to the scientists and the people smarter than me, and I'm doing what they say to do. And it's been a long, hard year. And so, my 6-year-old, as an example, has mentally suffered through this. All of his teachers went away. All of his friends went away. All of his cousins went away. All of his grandparents went away. Like we had prior to this a pretty big life, a pretty big world. We were connected to a lot of people, and it was great. And it all contracted when COVID happened. So I, without getting into specifics, I can tell you that my son had a couple challenges over this past year. And so just today, he returned to in-person kindergarten for the first time since before COVID. Right. Now, I know it's what he needs. And to echo what you said, Aaron, I've been in therapy for a long time. I'm a big advocate of it. It's really helped me.
It's huge.
It's huge. If you're somebody who's never had a negative thought in your life, you could still benefit from having a third person perspective. It's not just for people that, struggle with stuff, but the reason I bring that up is, I've been talking to her this whole time because, I'm trying not to. So personally for me, in the beginning of COVID, I was still trying to maintain my level of productivity at work. And I won't bore you with the details, but I've never been busier in my career. Where I work is trying to do all the new things all at once with a skeleton crew. And I also felt I had to prove myself because we had a reorg, and I'm now on the super team. So long and short of it, I was just working myself to death. And I pretty much had a meltdown. I freaked out on my boss, like just because I was irritable. I was getting depressed. I wasn't sleeping right. I wasn't taking care of myself. And that came to a head. I kind of fell apart, and we were able to do some redirection there. So it really screwed me up in the beginning with trying to balance home, because I got a 3-year-old and a 6-year-old at home. They're in here every 5 minutes. Somebody needs this, somebody needs that, somebody has to wipe, somebody's crying, somebody's going to the bathroom. Like, it's just, that's not, my job. I need to be left alone for hours. You know what I mean? And
Right.
it wasn't possible. And then I'm snipping at the kids and I'm short with my wife. It wasn't good. So that was really hard. And through working with my therapist, honestly, we were able to come to, a series of things that I can do to not feel like I need to quit my job, feel like my wife and my kids are in my way, feel like I'm going to lose my job because I can't do it like I used to. Like, I was really falling apart. And so that's been really good. But so today, we sent my son to school. Now, all of us on this panel are not going to offices because it's not safe. And I'm sending my kid to school. So.
Right. Yeah. That's a little.
It's just
So how does that make you feel?
Torn, man. Torn.
Right. Right.
I got to keep my family safe.
Right.
And I'm sending my kid to the front lines when I'm hiding in my house. Now, we're doing that because he's been suffering at home and with the remote learning and, without getting into specifics, he's really had some struggles. And
sure,
he went in today and it's the happiest I've seen him in 320 something days.
Oh, that's good
and
to
he
hear.
can't wait to go.
I love hearing
Now, we laid low because AJ in Vermont, they have maybe 10, 20, 100 cases a day. We've been anywhere from 4,000 to 8,000 cases a day since March. Where we're at.
Wow.
We're at
that's mind blowing to me, Andy.
We were panicking
right.
when it was 1,000 last March. And it's
we have 100 cases a day, and this is the worst it's ever been in Vermont. When COVID had first started, we thought 10 or 11 cases a day was bad.
Right. I live 80 miles from the
now it's
epicenter,
100
80
cases
miles
a day.
from Manhattan. So it's just been bad here, from the beginning. But I just say all that to say that our world was rocked. I mean, we have family members who are sick that we can't see, which kind of stinks because you don't know how long people are going to be around and people are struggling with it touches so many, like you said, Aaron, we're social creatures. I could tell you, we went to a playground. We thought it was going to be empty. And we wound up running into a couple dads I know and their kids. And we were all masked up and we all kept our distance. But the kids have never been happier seeing each other. And I played wall ball with my two buddies, which I haven't done since 7th grade. And I can tell you when we left, I just felt like there's something about that social connection that just, the Zoom call, it just doesn't.
Yeah, it just doesn't cut it, right?
Yes.
There's something it's almost like our brains know, like nice try, buddy. That's
right.
It's the same thing as the TV, and when you watch TV, you're not a part of that either. So good try though.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
It's like listening to a podcast.
Right.
Yeah, like every other podcast that isn't ours, I could see how somebody would totally feel that way.
Watching a sunset on your TV or a sunrise on your TV is much, much different than going outside.
100%.
Feeling the light on your face, hearing the birds chirp.
You're so right.
I don't know if that's making any sense, but I have hundreds of examples of just how COVID has been really difficult mentally on my family and I. And, I can share some solutions a little later on what I've been doing to help because that might help people. But it's been tough. What's up, AJ? You're going to say?
I just want to play devil's advocate for a second, right? As not as fun as video has been, could you imagine trying to do this pandemic without?
Right. Oh man, like this was let's say this was the 1926 or whatever that was, the Spanish flu.
Yeah.
Like there's not even in 26, there's not even TV to watch to occupy you, right?
Right.
You're locked inside and you're almost like your country is at war, right? Like that's what they tell you. Like in World War II, people are locked in their houses, not necessarily hiding, but just protecting themselves and trying not to die because there's just explosions and stuff going on everywhere. It's the same thing, it's they didn't have anything, right? So I think I love the devil's advocate thing, but I've learned very recently because I took that personality test thing and I got the ENTP. It's the debater. If you guys haven't noticed, by the way, I try to.
I'm shocked. That doesn't seem.
Surprise! Surprise!
Well, so but the reason I bring that up is because I feel like it's important. I don't want to be the devil's advocate in this situation because I think one of the worst things that you can do to yourself if you're struggling with anything is compare yourself to someone else. And let me give you an example because
very, very true.
Because perspective is everything. And you know, I'll talk about my childhood, right? I had a really, really rough time with my childhood, but I can pinpoint, like, it's like when you wouldn't finish your meal and your parents would be like, you know, they're starving kids in Africa. It's like, yeah, that became like kind of like a joking thing, oddly enough, but it's true. There were starving people in Africa, and it's like, dude, put it in perspective. I mean, there's starving people all over the world. I live in downtown San Diego. We have a very large homeless population. I cannot take 20 steps without seeing a homeless person who is starving, right? So to me, if I compare how bad my childhood was to someone living on the street, it's gonna make it seem like I'm just trying to dampen my feelings that it's actually okay to feel just as bad as that person does. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, I don't have to have lost a limb to be better off than that guy. You know what I mean? It's not a contest. It's not like who had a worse life, and then the only person with the worst life is the only one that can say, well, nope, that's just me. I'm the only one that can complain because compared to me, the rest of y'all have had it pretty freaking sweet, right? So I mean, if you think about it like that, it's like you're never gonna be happy. So if you're comparing yourself to someone else right now, and this goes with your career as well. If you're looking at somebody's career right now and you're on Twitter and you're following all these CCIE, like 4X CCIEs, it's the same thing. You know, that their journey is completely different, right? Maybe that person was born into a rich family, or maybe that person was a homeless person and became. We just don't know, right? But it doesn't make one better or worse than the other, and it doesn't make because you struggle. Everybody likes to hear those Cinderella stories, right? Like, especially in sports, it's like, oh, this person came from underprivileged, divorced parents, or you know what I mean, some tragedy, and that's supposed to make what they did seem better. And I think that's probably the problem. It's because we love to hear a good underdog story, but we're so afraid to consider ourselves underdogs. You know what I mean? My parents are still together. That's miraculous, right? My parents are married, right? They've been married for 40 something years, right? That's atypical. So if you look at it in that regard, I had a pretty sweet life, but I moved 10 different times before I even got to high school. Do you know what I mean? Like different states, you know what I mean? It's like that affected me as a person, and it created even who I am today with all the baggage that carries, right? So maybe COVID triggered me. It was the straw that broke the camel's back. And, you get to the point where there's just so many things happening at once. I'm like you, Andy. I didn't snap on anybody. Personally, I spent about a day and a half in the bathroom with a blanket over my head, crying. Like, I can't even describe the sound of my cry because I'm one of these dudes that is a victim of what I'll call a toxic masculinity, where my dad was, hey bro, suck it up. So guess what? Hey bro, suck it up. That's just the way I feel. And when I see myself in those situations, I've never cried in front of anyone, other than my parents, right?
I'm glad you're saying that, because ever since I've said that I'm in therapy, I now have this voice in my head saying I shouldn't have shared that. Now, part of that is because there's a stigma, right? Like,
yep, absolutely.
We're assumed that we're all perfectly healthy people and we have no problems and everything's good for some reason. Yep. And if you're in therapy, you must be messed up. And you reminded me with the toxic masculinity kind of thing. I mean, I can remember being little, like, suck it up, be a man, like.
Right.
So
why are you crying?
Right.
So every single time you cried, why? Stop crying.
And I'm not making this a gender thing, but there's 4 guys on this podcast. So I know for me, I was raised to not talk about my feelings and suck it up. Absolutely. And you go through life that way. And I think that's partly how you wind up depressed and crying in a bathroom, or, I've had different episodes of my life of just being overwhelmed. So just this conversation we're having now is important. And the conversations I have with my support system are important. Like, if I'm not talking to people about how I'm doing, that's a problem. And if we're raising an entire, if we're raising all men, young men, to think that they can't talk about how they feel and what they're going through and then suck it up and be tough, it's not mentally healthy. If I don't know if that's where you're going with toxic masculinity, but
Absolutely.
that was my experience, growing up. It wasn't really, nobody wanted to listen to the kid whine and cry, I guess. You know what I mean? I don't know where it came from,
and I don't think it's even my dad's fault. That's how he grew up. My dad actually has a very similar journey to AJ. I'm not even gonna spill your beans at all, AJ, but my dad has a very similar story to you, but he was much younger, and I don't even think he knows what it is because he never had that, And so, like, for me to think that he was going to pass that on to me, it's like I'm certainly not out here to blame anything, even though and I said I'm a victim of talks about. That is the wrong word for me to say right there. That's not it at all. It's just how I was brought up, and I was ignorant to other ways up until most recently. And unfortunately, part of the reason why we're even having this conversation, this topic came up, is because I think Andy and I specifically felt the need to bring this to light because of everything we just named off. If we have the opportunity right now to right the ship, because no one ever told us it was cool, you can have a therapist. It's completely normal to have a therapist. That's cool. Yeah. It is completely normal to cry. You can do that too. It's normal. That's part of your emotions. And in fact, it's healthy. You got to let that stuff out. If we could just get that message out there, I'll at least feel like I've done my part to break the cycle. Do you know what I mean? And maybe even in IT in general, we only talk about certain things, right? We tiptoe around a lot of different things, which, I mean, that's okay, especially in the workplace. It's you only talk about so much, but I think it's okay. If you're struggling and you need to tell someone, and maybe that person is your boss, because that person is, you're gonna be affected the way you act and the way you are. You're bringing that to work, because Andy, your example, you popped off at your boss. Was it his fault? Absolutely not, right? And I'm sure you'd be the first one to say, yeah, I probably shouldn't have done that.
I wasn't communicating how I was struggling over a period of time until the pressure relief valve popped. I mean, that's just, it's a perfect example of what we're talking about. If you're not communicating and trying to get relief from some type of suffering, it boils over and gets directed at someone it shouldn't. Your wife, your dog, your kid, your boss.
Totally.
And that's usually not productive, right? It comes out sideways into the wrong person. And, I mean, I could have lost my job if he wasn't.
You could have. It's interesting to say that this time of this environment that we're in, it's I'm sure your boss is a little bit more tolerant, especially, you know what I mean? It's kind of sucks to say that, but it is what it is. And I'm glad that he was cool with that and he saw that for what it was, you know what I mean? Because going forward, I know you're that's not going to happen again. Right. You're going to find
but that takes some emotional intelligence on his part to not take it personally and be like, yo, bro, I'm in charge. Who the hell are you giving a hard time to? He was able to take a deep breath and have perspective. How can I help this guy? You know what I mean? Which, and they have in their defense. I mean, they've really helped me navigate this. And, and I was apparently, here's what's funny. So we all have these things called core beliefs, right? And for me, I'm always trying to prove myself, and we could spend days talking about why, but who cares? But so on this new team, I was trying to prove myself because I was surrounded by brilliant architects. And I'm just trying to show them I can do it and I'm smart. But I went from having 9 hours a day of uninterrupted concentration to 5-minute increments. So I'm trying to maintain this, proving myself super productive guy in an impossible environment. And it was just a recipe for it just couldn't be maintained. But I tell you, for me, and it's always been this way. It's funny. People always talk about physical health. Oh, I got my run in today. I rode my bike. I lifted weights. Right. Maybe guys too. When do you ever hear anybody hey, I meditated today, or hey, I went for that walk outside, or I talked to my therapist. For some reason, mental health is just kind of it's not talked about. Oh, you're a hero because you ran for the 32nd day in a row.
Right. Right.
So it's a shame, just culturally, even that I could tell you, for me, So my biggest challenge seems to be irritability, and I know that'll come as a big surprise to this panel. Right? Yeah, I know.
I'm not laughing at you.
I would have never guessed that,
I
Andy,
know,
the way
but
you popped off.
You
at
guys, this is a
Daniel.
very serious conversation, and I'm not laughing at you.
I know,
That-
I
but-
know. It's
Okay.
but
okay.
that's why I'm bringing
I'm
it
over
up.
here like,
So-
I don't know what you're talking about.
but it's. I mean, we were probably arguing 10 minutes ago with each other before we started.
Yep.
But
Yep.
but so it's a personal challenge of mine. And Aaron, I mean, I went to 6th grade schools. My nose got
Yeah.
broken in 4th grade from some kid at a new school because I was the nerd. I
Right.
mean, I had a
Yep.
traumatic childhood. It wasn't fun.
Yep.
It kind of set up for some, fear of the world and anxiety type stuff. So like,
Yep.
so for me, the key is I have to keep kind of my baseline level of what would you call it? Like I'm trying.
Zen.
Kind of, yeah, because or let's say it's like an anxiety scale. I mean, I'm not this like
Okay.
anxiety defect, but there's different personality types, right? I'm spun up. I'm
Yeah.
an A type. I want to succeed. Blah 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 blah. I'm
Right.
up till midnight every night doing videos, doing podcasts, studying. I want to be an architect. It's
Right,
kind of
right, right,
ridiculous, right? So all that kind of keys me up, and then I'm tired, so I need some caffeine and like. So I probably exist at a scale of a 10. Like if I'm full blown panic attack at 10, right? I probably exist at a 3 or 4. Like I don't wake up relaxed. Like I'm
Right.
kind of zung up. Like it's who I am. It's genetics, whatever. So
Right.
I have this whole litany of things I got to do: sleep, exercise, meditation, eating well, getting outside, hobbies, therapy.
I love it.
All those things keep my baseline down, because what'll happen is if I wake up at a 3 and then I get a headache from the kids screaming, I'm at a 5, and then my wife gives me a hard time about something, I'm at a 6, and then something breaks at work and I was supposed like, so all day that it just goes up and up to where by the time I'm at a 7 or 8, I'm gone. Now I can't
Right.
be reeled back in, and it's a matter of time before I pop off at Dan, or I say something stupid to my boss, or I piss off my wife. I'm incapable of reeling myself in by then, because I haven't done what I need to do to keep myself calm and take care of myself. So I'm just sharing that because to me it's been key when I'm doing all those things, or at least 50% of those things on a regular basis. I'm much calmer. I'm not yelling at people. I'm chill. I'm not so irritable. But
You mean the meditating and stuff like that? Is that what you're talking
yeah,
about?
like all the self-care things. Like, so for me,
Gotcha.
the mental health episode and how I take care of mine is really just, what do I need to do to feel good? And I have a list of things. And if I can get to like half of them each day, each one of those things kind of just, I take a deep breath, I calm down. I spend 5 minutes meditating, I calm down. Like, I love creating content with you guys. That brings me joy.
Yeah.
Like
Same.
being with my kids. So there's all these different things but I've had to build those in my life. Like, they weren't always
Right.
there. And
Right.
I used to be, a pretty spun up goofball as a younger guy, because I didn't have any tools and I wasn't in therapy and I didn't know what to
Yeah.
do. And I thought the harder I worked and the crazier I was, the more successful I'd be, which is nuts. But, mental health is a whole thing. But I can just tell you, for me, every day I got to work at it. It's just like working out.
Totally.
You're working your muscles, you're getting cardio, you're lifting weights. For me, I got to expend effort and do stuff to feel good. It's a pain in the ass. I'd rather not have to do all that stuff.
Well, I think you bring up, like, you've inadvertently brought up a really good point, I think, which is that you don't need to be in a situation like myself or Andy or like even AJ in the airport. Like, you don't need to be there to benefit from all the things that you just named off, right? In fact, if you can learn to meditate, because it's an acquired skill for sure, and once you get it, like, holy man, you can
Anyone
literally
can
stop.
do it. Anyone.
Yes, anyone can do it. And I'm talking, folks, like, if you don't believe me, I really don't care. You could Google it, and you can believe that.
Science.
Look, you get good at it. You can make yourself fall asleep within seconds. You can also calm yourself down calm yourself down. You can get into the moment and feel present at any moment. The trick is that if you're only doing it when you need it, then you probably won't get as good at it as you would like to be. So if you're not feeling anything right now, I would highly suggest just giving it a shot. Everybody has 3 minutes somewhere. Even the Apple Watch did a thing like the Breathe app, for a while. That's basically the same thing, focus on your breath and that type of stuff. But there's tons of free apps out there. There's one called Headspace that has, most of them are like, you can pay for a subscription, but there's a couple of like the lessons that are free. That's all you need. You just need one little 5-minute guided lesson of someone telling you to breathe and focus. And I promise you, if you get good at that, you'll be able to escape any situation that you need to, that you feel yourself getting out of control in. I say escape because that it was not somewhere you meant to be. So you need to escape from that, because that was not your intent to go there. Your body's making yourself go there based on like, how you've grown up and all your different, environmental triggers and things like that. So please try it. And I did actually tweet earlier, hey, you guys should try meditating. I love it. I felt the need to tweet it earlier. Like, guys, you can try meditating.
I can tell you I've used Headspace, which is fantastic.
That's what I have.
I've been using 10% Happier for the past 2 years and love it. Now, what I will tell you is that the better ones I found do charge about $70 to $100 a year. So I'm going to give a free plug to my boy Sam Harris. There's an app called Waking Up. He's a neuroscientist guy. He's brilliant. This guy Sam Harris, but
I already like him.
He has an app called He's got a podcast too by the same name, but he has an app that costs $100 a year. If you cannot afford it, you can send them an email and they'll give you a free subscription.
Oh, dude, that's a hookup.
And it's he's got all these talks with meditation masters. He's got hundreds and hundreds of meditations in there. His wife, Annika Harris, does this kids meditation, and there's a 15-part child meditation in that app as well. So, there's access there. It's free, and you can try it out, for whatever that's worth. But I'm a big meditation gives me now what as a younger man I used to do chemically. I'll just put it that way. I used to find other ways to chill out, and I have gotten the same amount of relief without getting loaded, and that is a freaking miracle for me.
Same.
Take that for what it's worth.
It's almost
I
indescribable.
am so interested in what you guys are talking about right now. Like I have tried to explore meditation, and for whatever reason on my own, I can't quite figure it out. So I am like supremely interested in like your guys' experience.
You need the guided thing. I'll be honest,
because
I was with you. I was in that spot as well. Like I was like, I don't understand it, because when you're reading it, basically what they're telling you is like, think about nothing. I'm like, well, come on. If I could do that, like, what?
and that's not even, and that's unfortunate, because that's the misconception of it, and that's not even, what it is. But there's this guy Dan Harris. He's a national NBC, I think, anchorman, and he had a full-blown panic attack on the World News Tonight.
Wow.
So through that experience and through a year or two of investigating what happened through therapy, he now runs and owns the 10% Happier app and podcast of the same name. And so, here's a guy like we're talking about. He was an achiever. He was an A-type. He was going after it. He's probably working too hard. He might have been partying a little too hard, whatever. And he wound up having you can go on YouTube and Google Dan Harris panic attack. You'll see the man have one on national TV next to
unfortunate. God.
But he used that experience, and now he's helping millions of people. And I love his app because it's got video. They'll have like a 3-minute video explaining what they're going to do, and then you'll go into and the podcast is really great too. So anyway, it's, meditation is phenomenal, and it's a way to get relief from all that crap that, like, when that crowd came at you, AJ, if you had been meditating 5 minutes, every day or a couple days a week, when you could have, you're in touch with your body, your physical triggers, you realize what's happening, and like, oh, okay, I know what this is, because there's something, I forget what it's called. There's like a lizard brain, your fight or flight thing. It just takes over.
Yeah.
It shuts down it shuts down your prefrontal cortex, which is how you make decisions, and then you're just in fight or flight mode.
Adrenaline.
And then you're helpless. So this is just one of those tools that you can try to navigate that, because if your brain center, if your ability to think shuts down, that's a problem, right? So these are some
anytime
skills
your body has that physical response, which is why I asked AJ, like did your heart start racing? Like you did it. It hit you. Like your hands sweat, but they're cold. Your feet sweat, but they're cold. I've spent days like that. You know what I mean? And I could tell you that not seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, like when those physical things are happening to you and you can't control them, it's like a disease that doesn't exist. It has no cure in your head, right? It's like why is my body doing this? It's not because I ate something bad or because you know what I mean? Like I didn't catch a virus, you know what I mean? It's just, it came from me. I created it, but my body's having a physical. I'm not hungry. I
Right.
can't sleep. I mean, guys, Andy and I have talked about this, which is why we've probably been talking about it so much. You know, we're not trying to hi Dan and AJ here, but
Should we shut up now? let's get Dan
well,
in here.
well, we just wanted to bring it up because, and we've been talking so much because we casually kind of mentioned it to each other before, and I was like, man, I would have never known that you were like that, and he probably felt the same way I did, and so a little light bulb went off in my head. It's like, well, if I didn't know that about him, then clearly nobody else will, and vice versa. No one will know that about me, especially because, maybe I give this air of like everything's okay. That's part of the deal, right? It's like, why would I want to depress anyone, right? Like, I don't want to bring anybody else down. Again, these are toxic thoughts.
Right.
Why would I want to bring? So I don't want. Here I am pretending to be someone else. I'm not saying I'm like not authentic, guys.
But it's
Please
not
don't
something.
think it that
But
way.
it's something people don't talk about. It's
Yeah.
And I think it's a common misconception when you look at people on social media, right? Like when you're flipping through your Instagram, your Facebook, whatever, you're
Right.
seeing the tip of the iceberg. You're seeing
Yeah.
just one part of their life, and typically it's like the nice part that people like to share. They don't like to. No one's going to share, or typically people don't share pictures of themselves like crying,
Right.
or,
Crying, right? Yeah.
going through the bad stuff, like. So everyone has this perception that, oh, they must have a great life.
You know how brave you have to be vulnerable and announce to the world you're suffering? Like Tony E was my hero when he went out on Twitter and shared that like COVID screwed him up. He was depressed. He went to a doctor. He got meds, and now he feels better. Like that is
Same.
brave as hell because
Yep.
for me in my head, the reason Aaron and nobody else knew that is because like I may have to interview for a job someday, and I don't
Right.
I don't know if I'm trying to cultivate this brand that we talked about in earlier episodes of like who I am to the world so that I can get a job somewhere. And I don't want to be, oh, he's the guy in therapy or the weirdo who meditates. So it's unfortunate, but you don't talk about it. You keep it down because, I want to be perceived as this great person to hire and give a good job who will do a great job. And I do, but being vulnerable and talking about struggles many times isn't part of that conversation. So I love when, like, as we're talking about it, Tony came out and I mean, you look at the science, and I was going to pull it up, but it's too depressing. But like, if you look at just suicide rates in the past 11 months, it's
Oh my
freaking
gosh.
terrifying. It's absolutely like
yeah.
there's just so much suffering as a result of what COVID's done to our lives. So, not to
But-
get too far off the rails with mental health and all that,
No,
but COVID
but-
itself has just really, really caused a lot of suffering. And if you're not talking about it, and people are just suffering in silence, you will get no relief suffering in silence. It's almost going to feed on itself and get worse,
Yeah,
And I
absolutely.
want to apologize a little bit for all of us, like to everyone that listens to this, because looking back, our intent when we're always like all four of us, when we're telling people or trying to encourage people to, all you got to do is just do it, just put your mind to it and study, and then you'll be good. Look, just dedicate 5 minutes a day. I'm the worst person when it comes to that, right? Because I'm the pusher, right? I'm like, come on, you can do it because I can do it, right? And
But that comes from a
looking
good
back,
place. Like, you need motivation.
it does, but
I know where you're
I just
going.
want, I want to acknowledge though that it to some folks that can be very insensitive because I don't understand what you're going through. Right?
You remember when I was asking all those people how they did it?
Yeah.
At the time, I was in a month-long migraine. It was right before I exploded and fell apart. So part of why I couldn't understand how all these people are achieving is because, it was untenable here. Like, I was under so much stress that my body was screaming out. I was on migraine medicine that wasn't working. I was like 3 weeks into if you have ever had a migraine for a day, it's hell. I had one every day for a month. And I remember toward the end of that month thinking, I don't know how much longer I can do this. And that's a scary freaking thought. Now I have support systems. I talk to people. I was getting ready to take like a couple months off of work and just dial back from
Right.
just stop everything and try to get my health back because it was going so bad. But
It's very important because if you need to do that, you need to do that.
But
Like,
at the time, I was
don't-
pushing and pushing. Like, I got to study harder. All these people are like, there is that thing of like I got to achieve. Everybody's getting certs and I'm not. But I was ignoring what was happening in my immediate circle and in my life. And sometimes you just got to, like, who said it knocks? Like, maybe this year isn't my year to knock it out of the park. Maybe I just do the best they can. and
Focus
next
on
year's
something
bigger.
else, right?
Yeah.
Like instead of setting for a CCNA, you know, it's perfectly okay because we talked about the goals episode. I'll be perfectly honest with everybody. I haven't touched a card I haven't touched a book. I haven't opened a single thing or learned a single thing in 2021. And that's
Same.
because I made the conscious decision, dude, you have a problem. You know, my wife can't come home from helping her family, like being their support system, and then come home to me and find me like that.
Yeah.
That's not fair to her because it's a direct result of me not taking care of myself, right? Like I ultimately did cause that. So I didn't have the tools. What I could do to fix that is the same approach I'm taking to how am I gonna fix this if I fail my CCNA attempt? You know what I mean? It's the same approach.
So how do you
What
take
di-
care
what
of
did they
yourself?
do?
Like, I don't think we can end this episode. I'm sorry I just cut you off, but I want to make sure before
No,
we're
it's
over that we all talk about, because maybe we can give some people ideas on, like, you know, this is how I'm getting through COVID. This is how how are we
Yeah.
taking care of ourselves? You know, admitting to therapy is one, right? Like, that's kind of brave, and maybe I won't get hired
Therapy.
at Google or Facebook someday because of it, but
could care
I don't
less.
think that was going to
Look,
happen
if-
anyway.
You know what they say? I wouldn't want to be a part of any club that would have me.
Yeah,
You know,
right.
because look, if the price of admission is free, everybody's going to be there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, hey, if you don't like me in my worst, guess what? It's actually not my worst. It does get worse than this. So,
I want to hear from Dan because I don't want to talk over Dan. The
yeah,
whole time.
Dan, have you had a situation, dude? Or if not, have you learned anything?
How's your mental health? What's going on?
So for me, going back to kind of what you were talking about earlier, I was also diagnosed with ADHD at, like, I don't know, age 6 or something like that.
Yep.
Very, very young. And I went through the whole process of getting on medication and that medication not working and just making me more depressed, I guess.
Yes.
So I think, I don't know how to say this. I wouldn't say just run straight to medicine, right? Medicine definitely can help, but it can also hurt too.
Yeah.
And there is a trial period there, like kind of how much do you need to take, which one do you need to take,
Like a
and the only way you're going to figure that out is by doing it, right? So, but I wouldn't, don't just give up on it either. Like if you are trying to take medication to fix something like that or help with that, if one doesn't work, don't just be like, nope, that's it. Try to figure out, because once I finally got the right medication, it definitely helped me, right? And but that, I know that was kind of like way back at the beginning.
No,
of the episode there.
but
I've just been listening. I've been
it's
eating
funny
my
though,
popcorn
'cause-
over here and listening about you guys. So.
What a coincidence though, right? It's like, oh gee, like how many of us have ADHD? Like, I you're probably a lot like Annie and myself, where it's like, I don't even like telling people I have it because I don't want it to seem like I'm saying it's an excuse to anything. So
Right.
I have personally been suppressing the fact that I have it. Like I just, even if I know I have it and I'm like, oh man, in my head I'm like, come on, Aaron, get a hold of yourself. Like, why did I just walk out the door with one sock on? You know what I mean? We
Mhm.
we've all done it. But like, it's like time like that where now I'm able to identify what's causing me to do that, right? So to go back to like that, because I think that was a good way to bring this up. So like the coping mechanism. So number one, I would say this: if you do anything, obviously we suggest like the apps. Meditating is super free. You'd be surprised, a lot of benefits include free therapy, like counseling. Like employers are huge with that kind of stuff, like because they want you to be okay. But I would say that the biggest thing that you could do for yourself is just learn how to acknowledge when you're having a feeling that you don't want to be there, and try to identify what's causing you to feel that way. If you could just have a little bit of like in the moment wherewithal, that's my 2 cents. But I'll let AJ, I'll let you chime in as well.
The emotional intelligence piece is huge. Like you say, recognizing when there's a problem and knowing that it's okay to deal with it. Like I have spent so much time in therapy throughout my entire life. It's never been like a steady ongoing thing, but there have certainly been things in my life that I realized at a certain point, like, I do not have the tools to deal with this, and I need to get help. And it's been for various things, like, growing up, my father and I didn't have the best relationship when I was a kid. We had to have some therapy. Like, I had a lot of challenges in my 20s and I had to have some therapy, and I've had some recent challenges and I've had to have some therapy, and it is the most helpful thing in the entire world. And I can't say enough good things about it. So
I've heard somebody say that the mind who created the problem can't solve the problem.
Right.
So you're not just going to sit there and figure out, like what you said, Aaron, like you need somebody to help you develop skills and tools that you don't have. And what really is tough, and this is beyond probably the scope of this, but therapy's not free to my knowledge, and a lot of times it could be expensive, and everybody might not have access to it, and that really sucks. Like, it'd be, I don't know if we can ever, again, this is going to sound goofy, but you see all these like underlying problems that we have as a culture, and to not address the mental health aspect of that. Like, in my mind, there should be like nationalized mental health care that just, you want to go talk to a therapist, you get a therapist. Like, you get a therapist, because a lot of the stuff that I see just seems to be symptoms of mental suffering manifested somehow.
So like how much the healthcare companies would actually like save if it was like maybe the preventative medicine is all mental health, right? Because you can have heart attacks, you can have stomach problems, you can have head problems, your muscles can start to ache because of all this stuff. It's like, this is serious stuff. Like, your brain is controlling everything. So if that's kind of getting off the rails a little bit and you need to get it back on the rails, a lot of stuff will fall back into place. Like it will get better. Like, I mean, in my darkest moments, like, sitting under a blanket with the lights off, like doing my emergency, like some of these apps have like an emergency anxiety button, basically, where you can just get some immediate meditation, which is fantastic. But like, to prevent myself from getting there anymore, I just think that doing all the stuff that we talked about, like, it's hard to see a light at the end of the tunnel. And it's hard to think of all the stuff that we talked about when you're in the bathroom with the blanket over your head and you've been crying for 2 days. It's very hard to see that light at the end of the tunnel. And it's very logical to think, well, okay, let's go find some tools to fix that. But that's just not how it works. That is, when you start to spiral, you spiral, and you don't stop spiraling most of the time until you hit the bottom.
Yeah, it's too late.
That's too late. And that's when, and I mean, thank goodness I have a support system, which is my wife. I'd be completely hosed without her. Not even just like, oh no, it's gonna be okay. It's gonna be okay. It's just like, just having somebody there, like, and I've been at fault like this for a lot of my relationships, and I'll just shut it down with this, and I'll let Andy, I'll let you share your coping tools here, but I'm just gonna shut up after this. Like, I feel like I've been doing a disservice to everybody that I've been in contact with my entire life, like friends or otherwise, because I feel like I could have been such a better person. And so knowing that I can't change the past and I'm cool with that, like, all I can do now is go forward and try to do as much as I can. So if you see me tweet something like, you should probably go meditate, just know that I mean that stuff. And I'm just trying to help because it helped me. And I'm just trying to pass that on.
Yeah.
So, Andrew, sorry.
And it's all, I mean, it's all survival instinct and like,
right.
I mean, I had somebody once tell me I was an egomaniac with low self-esteem. And I had to think about that for a second, like, wait, what? But, I've spent my whole life trying to prove that I'm worthy and deserving of like love and success. And I know that sounds sappy, but like, I feel like I've been working my butt off to try to like make a good life and to have good things because, deep down, sometimes I'm not so much anymore, but for a lot of my life, like I didn't feel all that great about myself, and I know where it comes from.
Same.
And I know, so if you don't feel, worthy of a good life, you're going to sabotage. You're going to put on an air of confidence that you don't really have to try to shield your. It's all this smoke and mirror defense mechanism, survival instinct stuff that unfortunately doesn't make for a happy, adjusted life.
It's doing more bad than good, right?
But it's your brain short circuiting and doing what it knows to protect you. And unfortunately, a lot of that defense mechanism stuff, it's good in the short term. Get me away from the tiger, get me away from whatever. But it becomes a way for me. It became a way of life, and it just really screwed up a lot of relationships, over the years with that. But I don't know, man. It's
look, I just want to say, like, if you've made it this far in the podcast, thank you so much for listening. This is a heavy one. So, like,
but it's something that's got to be talked about, right? I mean, that's why we're talking about it. It's got to be talked about.
You know what? And honestly, this is selfish. This is selfish as heck for me. I'm just gonna say it because I want everyone to know what happened. Because I don't think that I'm not doing anybody any service by holding that in. It like me hiding that doesn't do good or bad. So if I can do good by letting it out, then why wouldn't I?
Do you know how many listeners we have that have been suffering this year, right?
Yes, I would imagine a lot.
If not all of them. And week in and week out, they're listening to us, and not once.
And here we are saying stuff like, which is why I apologize. Hey, just go out and do it, man. It's super easy, man. Just pick up the Yankee cards and start studying, Just do it when you're not doing anything else,
Right.
Like, hey, just pick up the Yankee cards when you're crying in the bathroom for 2 days and you haven't slept and you're not on any sort of drugs or alcohol or anything. You just are 100% just spiraling. Yeah. Pull out your Yankee cards then and see what happens.
But I think that's what this is about, right? It's that.
Absolutely.
It's that reality check of like, okay, for 28, 29 episodes, we've been sharing our journeys, everybody else's journey, all our tips, tricks, tools, and whatever that intro says.
This is part of the quiver, right?
But this is where we're at. We're coming up on almost a year of COVID, and we've all been affected by it. And to not talk about it, beyond, hey, we're all at home, and thank goodness for digital tools, like to not talk about the real stuff going on, I think is a disservice. So I'm glad that we're bringing it up. Dan, how's COVID? Like, has it taken a toll on you? Because you. Again, from the outside, you seem pretty chill and like, things are good. And like, has COVID kind of kicked your butt at all, or? It's fine if it has it. Like, it's not a competition, but I'm just curious. Like,
no, I got you. So for me, one thing I wanted to bring up, you guys were talking about meditation and stuff like that.
Oh yeah.
I think there's different ways to meditate, right? And for me, having hobbies like I do woodworking, I like to be outside and in the nature and stuff like that. And to me, that's kind of like my version of meditating, right? Because like when I'm woodworking or something like that, I'm completely focused in on what I'm doing there. I've got, I'm using my hands to do the work and everything like that. And I don't think about work. I don't think about, IP addresses and that kind of stuff. I don't think about, like, my brain goes somewhere else, right? And another one, which just is kind of crazy, but like doing photography and stuff like that, it's kind of like a creative escape as well. And which wedding photography is kind of insane and crazy, so that's not really a good example of that, but it does get my mind off of stuff.
Okay.
But I think having a hobby and sticking to practicing it can be helpful mentally, right? And because I see a lot of people in the IT world, and especially like with what we're doing here and everything like that, there are a lot of people that are super driven towards like the certs, studying and all that. And it's like the best advice I think I can give to someone like that is it's cool, it's great that you're driven like that, but you got to take breaks. You got to take breaks. You gotta get your mind off the studying and memorizing everything. And I think that's kind of how I've been this past year. Maybe that's how COVID's affected me. I haven't really liked studying at all. I don't know. It's just we
were taking the Knox approach, right? Where it's like, well, maybe it's just not my time, right? Kind of like what the advice he was giving Andy, where it's like, well, maybe it's just not your time to do that.
Have you been delving in your creative stuff, Dan? Like, have you been doing like woodworking and getting outside?
Yeah, and
that stuff's super meditative, man. There's creative. Just shut your brain off.
I mean, now I'm glad you brought that up, because we haven't talked about that. Like having it's not an escape, right? I want to be clear about that. It's just something that almost gives you that's your purpose, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's just something about. I know you guys give me a hard time about it sometimes, but there's something about like not having cell signal. Yeah. Just being out there.
Sure.
And not
no. We're only teasing you because we're jealous. Because like none of us can disconnect.
Nah.
That's
and I think I think you guys are kind of hitting around it earlier too. That's social media. So like for me, I try to stay off social media as much as possible. The part of social media that I absolutely love is when you can share projects and stuff like that, things that you're working on. You know, the part about social media that I absolutely hate is everybody seeming like they're the best thing out there, like they have no flaws or anything like that. So for me, I wish I could have a social media where take the social part out of it, I guess. And we work on projects and stuff like that together, share working on that kind of stuff, you know, like
you just subscribe to Reddit.
Yeah, there you go. It's not so much about like, hey, I did this today well, I
mean, sort of, but it's less
I
get what you mean.
Right? It's less cultivated.
Yeah, I get what you mean, though.
It's not like, hey, I'm at the beach or whatever, you know, that kind of stuff. It's
Dan hates the beach.
Yeah, I know. I'm not a beach bum.
Is that a dig at me? Yeah, Andy at the beach. I can't stand it.
There's cell phone service at the beach. That's why he hates it.
No,
him
it's definitely not a dig at you, man. But that's the kind of like, I don't know. Some people love it. Some people hate it. I'm just one of those that
there's nothing wrong with that, dude. Hey, look, everybody knows that you're not there. We were all there picking your Twitter name out for you. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
We had like a vote, right? Have you guys that it's genius though, but I'm glad you brought that up because I think that's a huge part. Like having the hobbies and stuff like that gives you a purpose. Not saying you don't have one otherwise, but like as a sole person, like you need a creative outlet, right?
Yep.
Like we all have that, right? I think for most of us, it's this podcast. Hopefully, if you're listening to this, maybe this is your outlet. Maybe we're your outlet. Maybe we're your weekly break. You know, that's some heavy crap to talk about there. But hey, I at least hope that, you know, we're bringing joy to a lot of people's lives here, and we want to just keep doing that. But we also want to, you know, pull back the Wizard of Oz curtain just a little bit and let you see what's going on behind there, and just know that like what Dan just described, like that's the tip of the iceberg, as AJ mentioned. That's all you're gonna see is like us, you know, telling you to do this and that and that. So I hope that if anything that you got out of this is that you understand that you're just as abnormal as all of us. If you're listening to this, we are all diversely abnormal, and celebrate it, man. You gotta just figure out who you are, and even if you're doing fine right now, try it. And if you find yourself in a situation where you need it, you'd rather have it when you need it than not have it. You know what I mean? So build that skill set now. And we appreciate it if you made it this long in the episode. We laid some. Whoa, that was pretty heavy, bro.
We're trying to. We want to be authentic, right? We don't want to posture like Dan just said. We don't want to be these social media like curated. Hey. No, everything's great. Everything's wonderful. Get your flashcards and go. Segue. Like, you know, that was
dead on, man.
This is what we're going through.
No.
We're in COVID.
And I think
it's
that's
tough.
I think that's one thing I like about, like, in the Discord, we have the failure plaque channel, you know, so people talk about their failures. Like, that's amazing. I mean,
and we're not saying, hey, go talk about your mental health. Like, if you're not comfortable with doing that, like, this is not a prerequisite to making yourself better. If you want to share. If you don't. But just know that, like, hey, like, somebody will listen. You know, it's like that. Somebody will listen. I'm just gonna leave it at that. So, theme of the day: somebody will listen. Again, thank you for lasting this long with us. We appreciate you bringing us into your living room or your car or your plane ride, if you're back on the planes like AJ, or any other scenario where, who knows, maybe you're sitting around on a Saturday night with the fire going and the whole family's listening to this podcast because, you know, why wouldn't they? Why wouldn't your 7-year-old enjoy this podcast? You know, my favorite thing to do is to speak for all of us, and I do speak for all of us. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time. See ya.
Hey everyone, this is AJ. If you like what you heard today, then make sure you subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcatcher. Smash that bell icon to get notified of all of our future episodes. Also, follow us on Twitter and Instagram. We are at Art of NetEng. That's Art of NETENG. You can also find us on the web at artofnetworkengineering.com, where we post all of our show notes. You can read blog articles from the co-hosts and guests, and also a lot more news and info from the networking world. Thanks for listening.